just to prove to you that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins, which is new. That's something new. He's the Son of Man. He's not just a rabbi, not just a prophet. He then said to the paralytic, stand up, take your bed and go to your home. And he stood up and went to his home. And when the crowd saw it, they were filled with awe, and they glorified God. They're not hostile at all. It's the leaders who are hostile. They glorified God who had given such authority to human beings. Does that mean to everybody? No. To a human being. And that brings us to the issue of what does Son of Man mean? And we have a choice. It's in the Bible. One possible meaning is in Ezekiel. In Ezekiel chapter 6, which is the first, well, it might be earlier, it's earlier now. Yes, chapter 1 in Ezekiel. Ezekiel's vision of the throne chariot of God and God on his throne. And he sees God on the throne, or the likeness of God, the likeness of the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. Because the Jews will never say, we saw God. They'll say, we saw the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. 3 removes. That's why Jews are made very uncomfortable if Christians say, Jesus is God. If you say, Jesus was a manifestation of God, or God was present in Jesus, that's certainly something Jews can understand. But to say the man was God, or God was a man, that's one of the dividing lines between the two faiths. It's just a kind of expression that in Judaism is considered too intimate. God is too high up in his throne for that. All right, but let's look at this. Chapter 2. God is addressing Ezekiel, and he said to me, Son of man, stand upon your feet, and I will speak to you. And when he spoke to me, the Spirit entered into me and set me on my feet. And I heard him speaking to me, and he said to me, Son of man, I send you to the people of Israel, etc., etc. What does Son of Man mean? It means, remember Ezekiel, you're a man, and I'm God, and don't forget it. I'm the authority here, and all you are is a simple human being. So that's it. A son of man just means a man, a human being. And at the end of this passage in the gospel, he is given such authority to human beings. What does your translation say? To men? Or to man, or what? Look at verse 8.
To human beings.
To human beings. Well, but that would mean Son of Man, in this case, means anybody can forgive sin. Can they? Now, I've told you the story of my uncle, who was a Marine Corps general, entered as a private in World War I, and retired as a major general after Korea. A great hero in my eyes, and he had the Purple Heart and the Bronze Stars and all kinds of great things. He was a great man. And he was at Iwo Jima. And they're storming the beach, and a boy fell right in the surf before him, was shot. He picked him up, carried him to the beach. He said that was, oh God, what a nightmare that was. The Japanese bullets were whizzing around my head. There was absolutely no shelter on that beach. You had to really hug the sand so they couldn't get you. And I was lying on my belly next to this poor boy who had been shot, and he looked at me and he said, I need a priest, I'm dying. A priest to hear my confession. And my uncle, whose best friend, he was Jewish, but his best friend had been a Catholic priest. As one of my best friends is. And he said quickly, he thought quickly, he said, I'm a priest, I'll hear your confession. And the boy said what he had to say, and my uncle knew the Latin response. And he did it. And later they got that boy to the Catholic chaplains and to the hospital. He lived. And he named his first son after my uncle. He saved his life. And my uncle said, did I do right? He asked the priest. And he said, absolutely. In extremis, anyone can perform a sacrament, even the sacrament of giving absolution. So under certain circumstances, a human being can forgive sin in the name of God. I don't know if that's what's meant here, because we have an alternative. And we'll break in a second, but let me just look. We have to look at Daniel. Oh, the arrangement is so strange. Daniel is really the last book in the New Testament, but that's not the way they have it here. Where is Daniel? Well, Daniel chapter 7 gives us a completely different meaning for Son of Man. Here it is. In Daniel chapter 7, you have a vision of the last judgment with those demons we're talking about with the demoniac. And here it is, 7:9. I looked, and thrones were placed, and one that was ancient of days took his seat. His raiment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames. A stream of fire issued and came forth from before him. 1,000,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. This is Judgment Day. We owe Daniel the classic image of God on his throne, white hair, white robe, white beard, and in front of him thousands of penitents standing in their white robes ready to be judged. Verse 13, he goes on. I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man. And he came to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him. So he looks human, this Son of Man, but he's more. Ordinary people don't come with clouds from heaven. And to him was given dominion and glory and kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. That's the Son of Man according to Daniel. Seems human, is human, but is infinitely more. He's a divine human being who comes with clouds and angels to judge the world, and God the Father gives him that authority. The church, of course, understands that as Jesus Christ. The Jews still await this Son of Man. So, what does Matthew mean by the Son of Man? It isn't clear because we have two completely different definitions. An ordinary human being, a divine man. I think he means the second. Because an ordinary human being, except in extremis, cannot perform the forgiveness of sins. It must mean that Jesus is identifying, or Matthew is identifying him with this Son of Man who's to come, as the demoniac said, at the end of time. But he's made an appearance earlier as a suffering servant. And the church says he'll come again as a glorious Son of Man with clouds and angels coming out of heaven. This is where the second coming idea comes from, putting together these texts and trying to figure out what it's all about. So, the third miracle of the series is to a Jew. The first to a Jew, the second to the Gadarene Gentile demoniac, the third to a Jew, and he cures his sin, not just his body. All right, that's a good place to stop, because we're now going to do the mission of the 12 disciples out to the Jewish community to bring the gospel to them, and that begins in chapter 9:9. He's going to list the disciples and then give Jesus commission to them. But also we have something else going on, this series of controversies. The first controversy we have just seen, over his authority to forgive sin. That annoys the Pharisees. The second one will be over fasting, and there will be 3 afterwards. So keep the structure straight, and we'll meet again next week this time.